back. And, you know, mental health is very much a part of our culture these days, and how to handle it, what is it, the levels of it. It's just an amazing topic and sometimes too big to cover. But I'm really honored to have with us today Rabbi Daniel Schonbuch. He's the executive director of the Shalom Task Force and the founder of Mental Health First Initiative, which aims to bring faith, family, and the meaning to mental health conversation. He maintains a private practice in marriage and family therapy. The author of a book entitled, and I think I get this right, Viktor Frankl and Psychology of the Soul, which is a guide to finding meaning and emotional wellness. And by the way, there's a picture of the cover of the book. And he does have a website, torahpsychology.org. And there's a picture of that landing page, torahpsychology.org. Rabbi Schonbuch, good to see you. How are you, friend?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Did I pronounce that book right?
You did, Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul. Right on.
Okay, good. This is an amazing topic for so many reasons, but let me just quickly go to things happening in Israel real quick. What's your take on the president's ultimatum to Hamas to release the hostages?
I'm really supportive of President Trump making that ultimatum, because we have a really desperate situation. This war has gone on for way too long. America has been in negotiation with Hamas for a long time right now, and things are not moving in the right direction. So this type of war necessitates an ultimatum, and I'm very glad he's putting pressure on the other side right now.
Do you know what hell to pay ultimatum is?
I'm sorry?
Do you know what the, quote, hell to pay ultimatum is?
Oh, yeah. I mean, hell to pay means that, you know, if Hamas doesn't fulfill their promises, then Israel will have the green light to finish off Hamas at this point. I think America's prepared to do that. They don't want to see this continue indefinitely. And I believe that Hamas wants to see this continue indefinitely because they benefit from it. So hell to pay means the end of the situation and the end of Hamas.
Is Israel now to the point where, even if it means death to the remaining hostages?
This is such a complicated situation. I just pray every day to release all these innocent people that have been held in Hamas terror tunnels. And we don't know what's going to really happen, but sometimes Israel will have to just act on the needs of the bigger situation. And let's just pray to God that we can get our hostages out before the war may be beginning at any moment right now.
Do you believe ultimately something has to be done with Iran that might even include a regime change?
100%. Iran, the revolution started in 1979, the Islamic Revolution. They sent hundreds of missiles towards Israel and our allies around the Middle East. They're the real threat right now. I was just at a convention. I met some Christians that grew up in Iran. And every day they'd go to school and be forced to say, death to America, death to Israel. This is a war of ideas. This is a war of annihilation against the West. And God forbid the Iranians get a nuclear weapon. Our lives are all threatened by that. So I believe we have to do something as soon as possible to deal with the Iranian threat.
Do you think Saudi Arabia will work with the United States and Israel on this issue?
This is the wonderful thing which is happening right now. Under the first administration of Donald Trump, he began something called the Abraham Accords. I believe before October 7th, Israel, Saudi Arabia, and other Western allied countries were about to sign a much bigger deal to transform the entire Middle East for Jews and for Christians. So I'm really praying that something really big does happen. And I believe the Saudis are moving in that direction right now. We'll perhaps see something very shortly that will change the Middle East forever. That will be an alliance of Saudi Arabia, moderate Arab states, Western countries, against the threat of the Iranians and the Chinese and the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union as well.
I had a couple other quick questions here before I leave this topic. It appears that there is no diplomatic resolution with Iran. We have to stop the nukes. The economy is in shambles, and a regime change is ultimately the answer. Or am I stretching it too far?
100%. I mean, under the Obama administration, They allowed them to continue developing their nukes. They gave them billions of dollars of oil, just as Donald Trump has been saying. They've been emboldened by the Democrats' policies over the last few years. There's no way out besides the end of the regime. And I'm really hoping that when we continue to maintain pressure, the concept of peace through strength, the other side will come to the table and negotiate. If not, I'm assuming that Donald Trump with Israel is about to do something about the situation.
Are you surprised how complicit Egypt's been all along?
Listen, they are, although they have a supposed peace agreement with Israel, they're not the friends of the Jewish state. I don't believe they're the friends of the West fully. And Egypt had occupied the Gaza Strip for many years. I mean, everybody's complaining Israel doesn't allow people to move in and out of their borders. Egypt could have solved the situation many years ago, opening up corridors of peace and negotiations. Till today, it's a very cold peace, and I'm not so sure where it's heading with the Egyptians. I know I've been hearing reports that they've been rearming parts of the Sinai, which were supposed to be demilitarized many years ago. So it's not clear to me yet what the Egyptian intentions are, but it's very concerning what I'm watching on the ground right now.
What do you think Israel's going to do with Syria if Turkey takes it over?
Oh, that's a big one. I mean, we might see another regional war between Israel now and the Turkish. It's not Israel, it's the Turkish that have been threatening. Under Erdogan, he wants to conquer and contain control of different parts of Syria. If Israel sees that its interests are being threatened, they may have to react, but of course, Turkey's a very large army. They have to react very carefully.
And one last question, Rabbi. Do you think that Jews around the world now are more unified after October 7th, even though some have had very liberal leanings?
I think there's a rebirth of a Jewish identity. Every war in Israel, the Yom Kippur War in 1973, the war in 1967, where Israel regained control of the holy sites, the Western Wall, the temple, our former temples. There's always been a rebirth of Jewish identity. Unfortunately, the Jewish community, they were aligned with the Democratic Party for many years. And unfortunately, that's really changed dramatically. I'm trying to talk to people that I know in our community to start supporting America First, to start supporting the Republican Party. And I believe that there needs to be a change. And I think people are becoming more aware. I mean, what's really changed after October 7th, Jews in the West are feeling threatened. I think for the first time on such a major scale since the Holocaust. And I believe that will loosen their affiliation with the Democratic Party and hopefully start forming some new ideas that can help the Jewish community survive and to help Israel survive. It's not going to come from the left. It's going to come from the support of the Christian community as well as the Republican Party. So I'm hoping they're awakened to this idea, and more people, as we saw in this last election, more Jews supported the Republican Party than ever before. I'm hoping it continues to go in the same direction.
Do you think the rise of anti-Semitism in America, and especially on the college campus, is another reason for reevaluating the Jewish identity?
Well, 100%. I mean, what we're seeing at Columbia University, what we're seeing at Barnard is so incredibly frightening. I mean, my father's a graduate of Columbia University in the 1950s. That was a safe campus for the Jewish community. Now it's a dangerous place. I mean, Islam uniting with the left, fighting against Judeo-Christian civilization, is really threatening our entire way of life right now. Mm-hmm. I think both Christians and Jews are feeling the same thing, this tremendous fear. And the campuses, these are the golden jewels of American society for hundreds of years. Columbia and Harvard have become bastions of the left, bastions of Islam, and none of us are safe anymore on these campuses. It's a very frightening thing, and it's not stopping. I don't believe the war with Hamas is just this recent war in Gaza. I think there's a world war going against Judeo-Christian civilization, and we have to be aware of it, and I think we're just reminded of it. The longer they keep on attacking our campuses, invading college dorms and libraries and stopping people from movement, we're all threatened, and we have to fight against this together.
Just as a little bit of a side note, it looks like the withdrawal of the $400 million grants to Columbia may be working. Well,
of course, that's the Donald Trump's tremendous wisdom. He understands that money speaks louder than words. So the minute he threatens to cut off their funds, which was $400 million of grants cut off for them, within a day or so, you see them arresting people. ICE has been just arrested some Palestinian activists. You know, many people on these campuses, we know this to be true, are not even college students. They're agitators from foreign countries, agitators from different places in the United States. And money talks, and I believe pressure is what's going to make a difference. I believe in this concept, as did Ronald Reagan, of peace through strength, and it seems to work in the best ways possible.
All right, let me take a quick break here. We'll come back. We'll talk about your book. You might want to check out the Rabbi's website, torahpsychology.org. And there's a picture of the landing page. And the book is called Viktor Frankl and Psychology of the Soul. And there is a picture of the cover of the book. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. And again, what an honor to have with us today Rabbi Daniel Schonbuch. He is the executive director of the Shalom Task Force and the founder of the Mental Health First Initiative, which aims to bring faith, family, and meaning to mental health. He maintains a private practice in marriage and family therapy. He's the author of a fascinating book called The Viktor Frankl and Psychology of the Soul, which is a guide to finding meaning and emotional wellness. And the Rabbi does have a website. Here's a picture of the cover of the book. And the website is torahpsychology.org. Well, Rabbi, who's Viktor Frankl?
Viktor Frankl was a Holocaust survivor born in Vienna in the earlier part of the 20th century. And he was a psychiatrist, neurologist. And unfortunately, he had to go through several concentration camps, Auschwitz being one of the most powerful ones that he went through. And he lost his wife, he lost his parents, he lost his brother, he lost kind of everything. And despite what he saw in the concentration camps, despite the suffering and the torture, he wrote a remarkable book that many of your listeners probably have read or heard about. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And I wrote a book about his book and his writings because I believe that the message of Viktor Frankl of man's searching for meaning is the most important thing we can focus on as therapists today. And I don't believe psychology is going in the right direction.
Wow. Okay, this is very timely. I'm reading a book on, it deals with depression. And what's so interesting about this is people who have gone through things like Frankl has gone through impacts your life, and you go deep within the soul to find search and meaning. I guess there's an old saying, you never get over it, but I guess you do get through it. How did he survive that? What happened to him inside that made him survive that?
I think the answer goes back to his earlier childhood and when he was a teenager, and he was a genius. And as a physician as well, he was part of the Society of Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud maintained that a man was, at his basic core, he had something called an id. A man was basically an animal. And unfortunately, Freud denied God and denied really the soul. Look at the structure of the unconscious mind, the id, the ego, the superego. Where's the soul in the picture? And Viktor Frankl really disagreed with that. He said, man does have a soul. And as a counterpart to the id, Frankl recognized something called the religio, which he talks about in another book called The Unconscious God. And the religio is the spark of God within us. It's a spiritual component of man. And I believe that Frankl was confronting this point, and he believed that man had a soul. Therapy had gone in the wrong direction. So he was fighting this battle long before the Holocaust, but because he believed that man can find meaning in all circumstances, he sought out meaning in the camps. And he believed by sharing a good word with somebody, sharing a piece of bread with them, if a person focused on fulfilling a meaning, even in the worst circumstances in life, he could change his attitude. He said, well, you can't change yourself, you can change your attitude. And I believe that he had to experience that in the camps and prove what he knew to be true before the war in Auschwitz. And that's why he wrote his book after Auschwitz.
Fascinating. So where does modern day psychology get it wrong?
Modern psychology focuses primarily on the self. Anybody that's been to a psychotherapist probably spends a lot of time talking about their childhood, talking about self-love, self-affirmation, self-esteem. And Frankl called this hyper-reflection. And he said, paradoxically, the more we focus on ourselves, the worse we get. So for people that have depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress, and so on, and addiction, need to focus on things beyond themselves. Things like values, things like meaningful experiences, things like volunteerism, helping others. And I've seen this in my practice, and I write about it in my book, Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul. When my clients focus more on things beyond themselves, they get healthier and much more quickly. So that's where psychology's gone wrong. They focus too much on the self. I'm trying to promote this idea that we need to help people in therapy focus on going beyond themselves, finding spiritual things to do in their lives, nature, culture, helping others, loving others, and when necessary, changing their attitudes towards their suffering, which they can do. That's a much more lucrative place to find healing rather than what's going on in psychotherapy today.
The essence of that is one's faith, isn't it?
It really is. I talk about it in my book. I have this pyramid, and on top of the pyramid, I put God. Whereas Maslow, people know the Maslow pyramid of needs, he puts self-actualization. But in truth, we're really spiritual beings. And if we don't dig into that core, we don't have our therapists, at least we can't talk about it with our therapists, we're not going to arouse it. Therapists seem to focus and open up more about their past, but all you have to do in therapy is just go out and work with them and kind of detect that spiritual spark. And this is unfortunately something I did not learn to do in psychotherapy. I learned to talk about people's parents, about their traumas. In my new book, I help people talk about how to find that spark in therapy. It's great for therapists and great for anybody that wants self-help as well.
In this book, it deals really with the depression that I'm reading of the late Charles Spurgeon, the great evangelist from England, as you well know. And what caused it was an event early in his ministry that people died on a stampede getting out of his church, someone yelling fire, and he never really got over it. And in this book, it deals with the depths of depression. I'm not through the book yet. I'm almost there. I may finish it tonight, as a matter of fact. But my point is that I don't see an impacting way to deal with deep depression. Can you help me out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the back of my book, after my readers have been through my description of spiritually focused psychotherapy, I offer them a 30-day logotherapy workbook. Logotherapy is a therapy Frankl created. Logos comes from the word meaning, the therapy of meaning. So in my book, I have people pick from a menu of values like courage, authenticity, citizenship, love, and so on. And I also help them pick from a series of meaningful experiences, things like going to a spiritual retreat, going out into nature, looking up at the stars, feeling the presence of God in the universe. I have them pick 3 experiences. And then in my 30-day logotherapy workbook, I have them every day ask themselves these questions. Have I fulfilled my 3 most important values today? And if not, why not? And have I carried out my choices of meaningful experiences? Have I experiencing something meaningful today? And is there something in a situation where I can change my attitude today? And I have them do that for 30 days. So I believe people need to try this. Instead of going for psychotherapy, talking about the self, evaluate your values, evaluate if you've experienced meaningful experiences, if you're changing your attitudes. And I believe after 30 days, we will see a decrease in depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as addiction.
That's amazing. What little time I have left, did Frankl, any one of his particular stories resonate with you?
The most remarkable story is he kind of proves what he was saying in the book. When he got to Auschwitz, he had it in his pocket, a manuscript from his magnum opus. It was going to be called The Doctor and the Soul. And the Nazis ripped it out of his hands and burnt it. A year or so later, he was dying of a disease called typhus. He had 104.5 fever. He knew as a physician if he were to fall asleep, he was going to die. So he found some scraps of paper in Auschwitz, and he began to rewrite his manuscript. And he claims that fulfilling the meaning of rewriting the work of his life, the most important book he ever wrote, kept him alive that night. So if people want to access this, I believe they have to find something spiritual, something to fix in the world. See, the question is not what I need, the question is what am I needed for? And if people ask that question and they follow that answer, that is the best way that Frankl was teaching and I'm teaching, and people can recover from depression as well.
So also what I'm hearing you say here, Rabbi, is that if you're going to work with somebody with mental health, in particular deep depression, this is a commitment. This isn't a one-time office visit. This is a commitment, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, if somebody comes to you as a therapist once or twice, they really, unless something miraculous happened, they're not going to be helped so quickly. You have to commit to the process of therapy. But again, logotherapy, the process of finding meaning in therapy, I believe if you focus on it just for a few months, you'll start getting better. I don't believe therapy has to go on forever, by the way. Some people sit in therapy all their lives. I would then question if the therapy is really good in the first place. It's not something that's rapid. It's kind of something in between. But it takes several months to make a difference. But I think the minimal time is 1 month, at least 30 days of utilizing my logotherapy workbook. I actually think they'll find changes as well.
Where do you open the patient's heart for the potential transcendence of God?
You just have to ask them about what's spiritual in their lives. You know, not everybody that comes to my office, I mean, I see Jews, I see Christians, I see everyone in my office. I mean, not everybody necessarily automatically believes in God. Some people find God in nature. Some people find God in the world, a spiritual force. But most people are really spiritual in their core. There's no atheist in the foxhole, as they say. So as a person's talking to me, I'm always looking for those spiritual resources. Perhaps I'll start them on a path of meditation if they want to. Perhaps I'll have them take a walk in the park. But I believe when you just start detecting it, you kind of notice people's spiritual strengths as you talk to them, specifically as you're looking for them. All you have to do is reflect on those spiritual parts. See, as therapists, we could choose. We could reflect on past or we can reflect on the future. We can choose. We can reflect on problems. We can reflect on solutions. So as my clients are talking to me, I'm always looking for that little spiritual spark of meaning. All I have to do is reflect on it, and I begin to open it up in session, and that begins to guide my clients.
One last quick question. Have you seen a rise in mental health issues over the years?
I think we're seeing an explosion, not just a rise, an explosion of mental health issues. The rates of depression in the United States, the rates of anxiety. We lost 100,000 people to drug overdose last year, to fentanyl. These are unbelievable symptoms of a crisis in mental health. And unfortunately, with today's technology and social media, things are just getting worse.
Let me say to our viewers and listeners, check out the Rabbi's website, torahpsychology.org. There's a picture of the landing page. Check out his book, Viktor Frankl and Psychology of the Soul. There's a picture of the cover of the book. Thank you, Rabbi. Good to have you. Can we get you back sometime?
My pleasure. Anytime.
All right.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you for your time.